Night settles over Windsor Great Park. Fog drifts between ancient oaks. Royal Lodge glows faintly behind the trees, lit but silent. The building looks calm, almost polite, yet the stillness feels staged. Security cameras hum, guards change shifts without speaking. Inside, a house breathes at enormous cost. Records suggest annual maintenance has climbed into the millions, even when rooms sit unused. This is not a ruin. It is a residence, fighting entropy every day. Roofs must be sealed. Stone must be treated. Gardens must be restrained from reclaiming the land. A single failure spreads quickly here. Prince Andrew remains inside this perimeter, largely withdrawn from public life. His income is limited. His role is diminished. His lease is unusually long. Outside the gates, public anger simmers. Inside, silence hardens. Royal Lodge was once a refuge for exhausted monarchs. Tonight, it feels like something else. The calm before decisions no one wants to make. The house stands intact, illuminated, and heavily guarded. But stability is expensive, and history suggests no royal retreat remains untouched forever. The question lingers in the mist. Is this house protecting its occupant, or closing around him? Royal Lodge occupies roughly 98 acres within Windsor Great Park. The house itself contains over 30 rooms, not counting staff corridors, service basements, and outbuildings. Records from the Crown Estate indicate long-term leases set at about £250 per week. Market comparisons suggest similar estates would command hundreds of thousands annually. Maintenance estimates vary. Former officials have cited figures between £3 and £5 million per year during heavy repair cycles. Roof repairs alone have run into 7 figures. Security adds another layer of cost. Armed officers, monitoring systems, and perimeter control operate continuously. Gardens require full-time teams. Tree management is constant due to age and disease. Heating a structure of this scale demands industrial systems. None of this generates revenue. The property cannot be sold. It cannot be subdivided. It cannot be commercially rented. The lease places responsibility squarely on the occupant. Prince Andrew assumed these obligations in 2002. At the time, he received income from royal duties and private sources. That balance later shifted. Expenses did not. Every year resets the clock. Royal Lodge did not begin as a palace. Records place its origins in the 17th century as a modest ranger dwelling. It served function, not ceremony. That changed in 1812 when the Prince Regent, later George IV, ordered expansion. He wanted privacy without surrendering status. Architects enlarged the structure, adding wings and classical symmetry. The result was a country house scaled for royalty, but insulated from court life. This purpose mattered. Royal Lodge became a retreat for those strained by visibility. Over time, it hosted minor royals, widows, and heirs needing distance. Queen Victoria recognized its utility and preserved that role. By the early 20th century, the house symbolized relief rather than power. That symbolism peaked when the Duke of York moved in during 1931. He was anxious, withdrawn, and overshadowed. The house offered containment. Historians believe this environment helped stabilize him before accession. When abdication forced him onto the throne as George VI, Royal Lodge remained his refuge. His wife transformed it into domestic normality. Their daughters experienced rare privacy there. The pattern was clear. Royal Lodge absorbed stress from the crown. Pressure remained. Royal Lodge has long attracted whispers that extend beyond history. Staff accounts, shared cautiously, describe footsteps in empty corridors and lights found burning in sealed rooms. Folklore often centers on the Queen Mother, who lived here for half a century. Some visitors report a sense of watchfulness near her former sitting rooms. Others speak of sudden temperature drops. No formal investigation confirms these claims. Practical explanations exist. Old wiring misfires. Settling structures transmit sound unpredictably. Large houses amplify isolation into anxiety. Yet, the stories persist. They surface during renovations when walls open and old spaces reappear. Workers have described unease rather than fear. Records suggest no one ever refused work because of it. The atmosphere is subtler. A sense of being observed, a sense of interruption. Psychologists note that places layershire with memory often provoke this response, especially when access is restricted. Royal Lodge fits that profile perfectly. It holds generations of private life behind controlled gates. For a resident under scrutiny, such sensations may intensify. Stress heightens perception. Silence magnifies doubt. Whether presence or projection, the effect is real to those inside. The house does not offer comfort equally. In 1931, the Duke of York arrived at Royal Lodge with hesitation rather than ambition. Records indicate he did not choose the property for prestige. He needed separation. His stammer limited public confidence. Court life magnified weakness. The house offered distance without exile. Geography mattered. Set deep within the park, Royal Lodge allowed retreat while remaining close to Windsor Castle. This balance proved essential. When abdication reshaped the monarchy in 1936, the house gained new significance. George VI returned here after exhausting public appearances. Staff logs describe shorter schedules and longer walks. The building absorbed tension rather than displaying power. During the Second World War, its role intensified. Bombing raids forced constant movement. The King and Queen used Royal Lodge as a recovery space between London duties. Blackout curtains, reinforced windows, and restricted access altered daily life. Yet the house remained functional. After the war, declining health anchored the king closer to familiar ground. When he died in 1952, the Queen Mother chose to remain. She resisted relocation. Historians suggest emotional continuity outweighed protocol. Over decades, she reshaped the gardens and interiors gradually. No grand redesign occurred. Continuity mattered. Royal Lodge became memory preserved in brick and soil. The Queen Mother's residency defined Royal Lodge for 50 years. She transformed it into a living archive rather than a shrine. Rooms stayed usable. Furniture shifted slowly. Staff remained long-term. This stability masked the scale of upkeep required. Maintenance logs from the late 20th century note recurring issues. Aging pipes, roof leaks, drainage failures after heavy rain. Costs increased quietly. The Crown Estate covered major structural oversight, but daily responsibility rested with the occupant. Despite this, the Queen Mother resisted modernization. She preferred familiarity over efficiency. Heating systems lagged behind contemporary standards. Electrical upgrades occurred only when unavoidable. Her presence shielded the property from scrutiny. Public affection buffered expense. That protection ended with her death in 2002. The house stood empty briefly. Internal discussions weighed options. Conversion risked political backlash. Leasing required a suitable tenant. The decision to offer the lease to Prince Andrew followed precedent. Younger royals had occupied it before. Yet this transition differed. Andrew was divorced. His public role was narrowing. He sought permanence. The lease extended 75 years. Renovation obligations transferred immediately. Unlike his grandmother, Andrew would modernize aggressively. The house entered a new phase, faster and riskier. Renovation began soon after occupancy. Records suggest initial estimates underestimated complexity. Roof structures required replacement rather than repair. Electrical systems were stripped back to bare conduits. Plumbing had to be rerouted through protected walls. Listed status limited alterations. Each approval slowed progress. Costs escalated. By 2004, expenditures reportedly exceeded £7 million. Funding came from private resources, loans, and income streams that assumed continuity. The investment locked Andrew into the property psychologically and financially. The house shifted from refuge to asset justification. Interior choices reflected this. Heavier furnishings replaced lighter designs. Rooms emphasized authority rather than comfort. The gardens were restored for private use, not display. Staffing expanded. Security protocols intensified. At this stage, Royal Lodge functioned smoothly. Income covered expenses. The arrangement between Andrew and Sarah Ferguson settled into routine. Though divorced, they cohabited without formal explanation. The house allowed ambiguity. Public curiosity faded. For a time, stability returned. Yet the scale of ongoing costs created dependency. Any disruption would ripple immediately. Unlike earlier occupants, Andrew lacked institutional cushioning. His support derived from role, not reign. That distinction mattered. Royal Lodge now depended on relevance. And relevance is fragile. By the early 2010 years, pressure mounted subtly. Andrew's official engagements declined. His trade envoy role ended under criticism. Allowances tied to duties came under review. Financial flexibility narrowed. Maintenance did not. Internal reports noted upcoming restoration cycles. Stonework erosion. Drainage failures near foundations. Roofing sections approaching end of life. Estimates reached several £1 million again. These were not cosmetic. Delay risked structural damage. The Crown Estate required compliance. Andrew explored alternatives quietly. Leasing was prohibited. Sale was impossible. Subdivision violated agreements. The house offered no exit. Around this time, folklore around the property went surfaced publicly. Tabloids framed it as haunted isolation. Commentators speculated psychological strain. Practical observers noted simpler causes. Isolation breeds narrative. Large houses amplify stress. Surveillance heightens paranoia. Security incidents reinforced vulnerability. Fence breaches occurred. Patrols increased. The sense of containment deepened. Royal Lodge became less sanctuary, more enclosure. Visitors decreased. Family gatherings thinned. The house remained operational but tense. Its scale magnified silence. Each empty room demanded heat, care, or attention. Nothing could be paused. The structure required presence. Absence accelerated decay. The occupant stayed. Pressure accumulated. In 2019, the protective distance collapsed. Court filings in the United States named Prince Andrew in connection with Jeffrey Epstein. The allegation was severe and specific. Andrew denied wrongdoing. Records show immediate institutional response. His public duties were suspended. Charities distanced themselves. Military affiliations were relinquished. Income streams narrowed abruptly. Royal Lodge did not change. Its costs continued unchanged. Maintenance schedules did not pause for scandal. Security demands increased rather than decreased. Media presence intensified outside Windsor Great Park. Helicopters circled. Long lenses pointed through trees. Inside, routines hardened. Staff movement became minimal. External advisors replaced informal counsel. The house absorbed the shock, but reflected it inward. Isolation deepened. Financial strain became visible. Legal exposure in another jurisdiction raised uncertainty. Settlement discussions emerged later, though terms remained private. What mattered operationally was speed. Support withdrawn faster than expenses could adjust. Royal Lodge required certainty. Andrew faced ambiguity. The lease bound him. Leaving meant forfeiting millions invested. Staying required funding without roll. This imbalance defined the crisis. The house no longer symbolized continuity. It became a fixed liability. Every week reset the problem. Nothing resolved itself automatically anymore. Now institutional distancing accelerated through 2020. Palace communications tightened language. References to Royal Lodge became rare. Internally, discussions shifted toward sustainability. Could the occupant meet obligations long-term? Crown estate standards allowed little flexibility. Deferred maintenance risked asset value. Yet intervention carried reputational risk. The pandemic complicated matters. Lockdowns reduced movement, but not costs. Gardens still grew. Systems still aged. Contractors faced delays. Prices rose. Supply chains tightened. Estimates increased again. Meanwhile, legal strategy consumed attention and funds. Advisors focused outward. The house demanded inward focus. This tension strained decision-making. Support networks thinned. Public sentiment hardened. Polling reflected declining tolerance for perceived privilege. Royal Lodge became shorthand in commentary. A mansion retained by a disgraced prince. Context vanished. Numbers remained. Inside, practical choices narrowed. Staffing levels were reviewed. Some roles consolidated. Security remained non-negotiable. Any visible downgrade risked escalation. The property existed in limbo, neither reclaimed nor relinquished. Historians note parallels with earlier royal retreats used during disgrace. The difference here was permanence. Previous occupants left eventually. This one could not easily do so. The house held fast, so did the problem over time. In early 2022, resolution arrived through settlement. Andrew reached an agreement with Virginia Giuffre. No admission of liability occurred. Financial terms were undisclosed but widely reported as substantial. The immediate legal threat ended. Consequences did not reverse. Titles were removed. Patronages were relinquished permanently. Official role ceased. Income tied to service ended. Royal Lodge remained unchanged structurally, but its justification weakened further. Questions intensified around occupancy. Reports suggested pressure to relocate to Frogmore Cottage. That property required less maintenance. It aligned better with diminished status. Andrew resisted. Records suggest the lease provided leverage. Eviction was complex. Financial responsibility for restoration created standoff. Neither side wanted escalation. The house became negotiation terrain. Meanwhile, upkeep deadlines approached. Major works could not be postponed indefinitely. Engineers warned of compounding damage. Weather events stressed drainage systems. Tree disease required urgent management. Each intervention cost more. The Queen's death later that year altered dynamics again. Authority shifted. Review processes reset. Royal Lodge entered reassessment under new reign. Stability that once protected the arrangement dissolved. The property awaited decision. So did its occupant. Momentum stalled across institutions and timelines globally, then locally, again today. Today, Royal Lodge operates under constrained normalcy. Daily life continues. Systems function. Staff attend. Security patrols persist. Yet long-term clarity remains absent. The Crown Estate evaluates options within precedent. Lease terms bind both sides. Public discourse remains polarized. Some view continued residence as entitlement. Others see contractual inevitability. Financial transparency is limited. Records suggest assistance from private family sources. Sustainability remains questioned. Preservation costs never decline. Inflation compounds them. Climate patterns increase maintenance frequency. Storms stress mature trees. Heat strains outdated systems. The house demands adaptation, it resists. Paranormal folklore persists quietly. Some staff report unease in unused wings. Others dismiss it entirely. Practical explanations dominate. Empty spaces feel alive because history saturates them. Royal Lodge holds centuries of retreat, grief, and avoidance. Its walls were built to absorb pressure from the crown. They were not designed to resolve conflict. As a structure, it endures. As a symbol, it fractures. The future hinges on valuation beyond money. Is the house worth sustaining without function? Can heritage justify isolation? The estate will survive regardless. Occupancy may not. One question remains unresolved. How long can preservation exist without purpose still unresolved? In recent years, discussions turned toward reinvention rather than removal. Advisors examined whether Royal Lodge could serve a revised institutional role. Precedent existed. Other royal properties had shifted purpose quietly. Some became offices. Others hosted charitable operations. The obstacle here was scale and symbolism. Royal Lodge was too private for tourism, too historic for alteration, too controversial for public programs. Any change risked reopening debate. Financial modeling showed limited options. Operational conversion required capital investment before return. That capital was unavailable. Meanwhile, continued residence required justification beyond tradition. Reviews assessed environmental impact. Energy inefficiency placed the house out of step with modern standards. Retrofitting proved complex. Listed protections limited solar installation. Insulation upgrades threatened fabric integrity. Each improvement carried cost and compromise. The estate faced a paradox. Preservation demanded modernization. Modernization risked heritage. Public scrutiny sharpened for every proposal. Silence became policy. Incremental repairs continued without announcement. Time was used as buffer. Historically, royal estates often outlast controversy through patience. This case tested that strategy. The house waited. Institutions hesitated. The occupant remained. Reinvention stalled without mandate. Momentum slowed deliberately. The longer nothing changed, the harder change became. Royal Lodge persisted in unresolved equilibrium. Behind the scenes, operational realities dominated planning. Staffing levels were recalibrated to minimum compliance. Contractors rotated more frequently to manage costs. Short-term fixes replaced long-term solutions. Engineers flagged cumulative risk. Deferred repairs increase exponential expense. Drainage failures undermine foundations. Roof patches fail faster than replacements. Yet full restoration required commitment extending decades. That commitment conflicted with uncertain occupancy. The Crown Estate's mandate emphasized asset protection over individual accommodation. This distinction guided internal recommendations. External pressure mounted intermittently through media cycles. Each surge faded without resolution. The property existed outside normal accountability mechanisms. It was neither public building nor private estate. This ambiguity frustrated critics and administrators alike. Comparisons emerged with other historic houses struggling to justify existence. Many survived through public access. Royal Lodge could not. Security constraints forbade it. Thus, funding models failed. Heritage grants excluded occupied royal residences. Commercial partnerships were inappropriate. The estate relied on internal subsidy or occupant funding. Both faced limits. Over time, maintenance schedules compressed. Emergency responses replaced planning. This mode increased stress on staff. Turnover rose quietly. Institutional memory thinned. The house functioned, but resilience weakened. Survival continued. Stability did not. Culturally, Royal Lodge retained resonance disproportionate to visibility. It represented continuity for some and stagnation for others. Academic studies on monarchy note how private spaces shape public legitimacy. When retreat becomes refuge from accountability, symbolism shifts. This transformation occurred gradually here. The house once sheltered vulnerable monarchs during crisis. Now it sheltered controversy. That reversal altered perception. Public tours of Windsor. Great Park passed nearby without access. Visitors sensed exclusion. The contrast heightened awareness of privilege. Commentators framed the lodge as frozen time. Architects emphasized craftsmanship worth preserving. Economists questioned opportunity cost. Environmental analysts highlighted land use inefficiency. Each discipline produced different conclusions. None resolved the central issue. Royal Lodge embodied competing values without hierarchy. Memory, utility, cost, and image collided. Institutions struggled to prioritize. Historically, such conflicts resolve through decisive transition. Sale, repurposing, abandonment. None were viable. The lease structure delayed inevitability. This delay created limbo. Limbo drains resources silently. Over years, erosion occurs unnoticed. Not collapse. Slow diminishment. The house remained intact. Its meaning eroded. That erosion mattered more than stone loss. The future narrowed incrementally, decision by decision. Looking ahead, Royal Lodge faces an inflection shaped by time rather than action. Leases expire eventually. Buildings age, regardless of debate. Maintenance thresholds force choice. Preservation without purpose becomes untenable. Purpose without adaptation fails. The estate will endure. Its occupants will change. History suggests transition arrives quietly. One winter storm. One structural report. One administrative review. Decisions crystallize under pressure. When that moment comes, Royal Lodge will shift role again. It always has, from Keeper's Lodge to Royal Retreat, from refuge to liability, from symbol to question. What endures is the cost of beauty sustained beyond function. Each generation pays differently. Money, privacy, reputation, labor, silence. Royal Lodge has demanded all of these at various times. The current chapter emphasizes endurance without resolution. That is costly. Not dramatic, but draining. As the park surrounds it unchanged, the house waits. It does not decide. People decide around it. Eventually, they must choose between preservation and release, between holding history intact or letting it transform. The final outcome remains unwritten. Only one question persists, unresolved and unavoidable. What price will survival demand next? Historical comparisons offer context for Royal Lodge's predicament. Other royal residences faced similar reckonings. Kensington Palace shifted toward apartments and offices. Balmoral remained private due to scale and tradition. Smaller lodges were released quietly. Royal Lodge sits awkwardly between categories. It is too large for discreet downsizing, too small for national monument status. Records indicate internal reviews considered partial vacancy models. These proved impractical. Security zoning conflicted with preservation standards. Financial modeling showed marginal savings. Emotionally, resistance remained strong. Attachment to place complicates rational planning. Psychologists studying elite households note this pattern repeatedly. Identity fuses with residence. Loss feels existential. For Prince Andrew, departure would symbolize final separation from institutional belonging. That weight influences decisions as much as contracts. Meanwhile, public fatigue grows. Attention cycles shorten. New controversies replace old ones. Royal Lodge drifts from headlines. That quiet is deceptive. Deferred issues compound silently. Infrastructure ages. Gardens mature beyond design limits. Wildlife encroaches. Management shifts from stewardship to containment. Each year narrows options further. Eventually, only reactive choices remain. History shows such moments arrive without warning. Administrations change. Budgets tighten. Reports surface. Royal Lodge will not announce its breaking point. Financial accountability remains the unresolved core. Royal Lodge consumes resources without producing value. This reality troubles modern estate management. The Crown Estate operates under parliamentary oversight. Public reporting demands justification. Subsidizing private residence attracts scrutiny. Yet terminating leases risks legal dispute. Precedent discourages abrupt action. Thus, cost is absorbed gradually. Records suggest maintenance is prioritized over improvement. This preserves appearance while delaying reckoning. Accountants describe this as managed decline. It avoids headlines but increases long-term expense. Inflation accelerates the effect. Labor costs rise. Materials fluctuate. Emergency repairs command premiums. Planned projects stall. Over time, cumulative spending surpasses decisive intervention. This pattern is not unique. Historic properties worldwide face similar traps. Without adaptive reuse, they drain silently. Royal Lodge's isolation worsens the issue. No visitor revenue offsets cost. No institutional function legitimizes spend. The house exists for habitation alone. That model no longer aligns with public expectations. Surveys show declining tolerance for opaque privilege. Trust erodes when costs lack explanation. Institutions respond cautiously. Transparency risks backlash. Silence breeds suspicion. Royal Lodge sits within this tension. Every budget cycle reopens the same question. Who pays? Why? For what? And how long operational staff experience Royal Lodge differently? For them, scale dictates routine. Corridors extend beyond sightlines. Rooms require daily checks regardless of use. Heating zones must be balanced manually. Sensors fail in older sections. Staff logs note frequent false alarms. Wildlife triggers motion systems. Weather shifts pressure rapidly. Training emphasizes discretion. Public curiosity is constant risk. Employment offers prestige but limits mobility. On-site housing is restricted. Rotations are long. Turnover remains low, but fatigue accumulates. Emotional labor increases during controversy. Workers absorb tension without voice. Interviews with former staff suggest loyalty mixed with strain. They describe pride in preservation. They also describe isolation. The estate feels separate from ordinary life. This separation intensifies during scrutiny. Staff become invisible buffers. Their work sustains calm surfaces. Yet they lack influence over strategy. Decisions occur elsewheres. When budgets tighten, workloads rise. When repairs delay, improvisation fills gaps. This erodes morale gradually. Institutions often overlook this cost. Preservation focuses on fabric, not people. Royal Lodge exemplifies that imbalance. The house survives through continuous human effort. That effort rarely features in debate. Yet without it, deterioration would accelerate quickly. Any future plan must address this reality. Buildings endure through labor, not legend. Ultimately, Royal Lodge forces confrontation with legacy management. Heritage cannot be frozen. It must justify itself repeatedly. For 2 centuries, the house adapted to need. Retreat, recovery, privacy. Those functions evolved with monarchy itself. The present challenge is different. It concerns legitimacy under scrutiny. Preservation now competes with accountability. Decisions once private now resonate publicly. Royal Lodge highlights this shift starkly. Its beauty is unquestioned. Its cost is quantifiable. Its purpose is contested. Institutions prefer gradualism. But time undermines gradual solutions. Climate, economics, and public sentiment converge. Eventually, alignment becomes necessary. That alignment may involve transition, or reduction, or release. History suggests compromise rather than collapse. The house will not vanish. It will change role. When that happens, narratives will follow. Some will mourn loss. Others will claim correction. What remains constant is the question Royal Lodge has always embodied. How much should be spent to protect those seeking shelter from power itself? The answer has shifted before. It will shift again. Until then, the house stands quietly, maintained, guarded, costly, waiting for the next definition of its worth. And history will measure that choice long after decisions fade away. Royal Lodge also illustrates how leases shape destiny. The 75-year agreement transferred obligation without ownership. That structure discouraged exit. Sunk costs accumulated. Each repair reinforced attachment. Legal scholars note such arrangements reduce mobility. Leaving feels like loss rather than relief. This psychological trap appears in many long leases. Here, it intersects with heritage law. Listed status restricts alteration. Planning consent slows response. Emergency work proceeds. Improvement stalls. This asymmetry favors stasis. Meanwhile, valuation becomes abstract. The property cannot be priced openly. Comparable sales do not exist. Without market signal, debate relies on perception. Perception hardens into belief. Belief resists data. Royal Lodge becomes symbol more than sight. Administrators navigate optics alongside engineering. This complicates governance. Decisions that would be simple elsewhere require choreography. Timing matters. Announcements coincide with quieter cycles. Silence becomes strategy. Over time, strategy becomes default. That default sustains presence without endorsement. The house remains occupied because change lacks sponsor. Sponsorship requires authority willing to absorb criticism. Such authority emerges rarely. When it does, windows close quickly. Missed moments linger for decades. Royal Lodge sits within one such missed moment, suspended by paperwork, precedent, and patience. Environmental pressures introduce another layer of cost. Windsor Great Park hosts protected habitats. Any intervention requires ecological assessment. Deer populations affect planting survival. Tree disease spreads unpredictably. Ash dieback and oak decline demand monitoring. Felling requires permits. Replanting requires sourcing mature stock. Climate shifts alter rainfall patterns. Heavy downpours overwhelm historic drainage. Dry summers crack foundations. Adaptive measures are limited by listing rules. Engineers recommend subtle grading and soakaways. Approval takes time. During delays, damage continues. Water ingress stains interiors. Mold risks increase. Air handling upgrades remain constrained. Energy audits highlight inefficiency. Boilers oversized for partial occupancy waste fuel. Zoning upgrades face wall constraints. Temporary solutions proliferate. Temporary solutions cost more over time. Estates management accepts this trade reluctantly. The lodge sits within a park of national importance. Visibility raises stakes. Any misstep invites criticism from conservation groups. Balancing heritage and ecology requires compromise. Compromise rarely satisfies. Records suggest repeated consultations without resolution. Each season adds variables. Budgets chase weather. Planning chases budgets. The cycle repeats annually. Environmental reality does not negotiate. It imposes timelines. Buildings must respond or degrade. Royal Lodge responds slowly by design. That delay remains costly. Media dynamics shape outcomes even without action. Coverage spikes follow anniversaries, court dates, and administrative reviews. Each spike reframes the property anew. Editors select images that emphasize scale. Long lenses flatten distance, exaggerating proximity. Headlines compress complexity into shorthand. Royal Lodge becomes headline throws not address. This affects negotiation leverage. Public institutions respond to sentiment as signal. Private negotiations stall under glare. Conversely, silence invites speculation. Rumor fills gaps. Online forums amplify folklore. Claims circulate detached from evidence. Counterpoints travel slower. This asymmetry influences perception. Communications teams model scenarios. Release too much, provoke backlash. Release too little, appear evasive. The safest course becomes minimal disclosure. That choice prolongs uncertainty. Uncertainty benefits no one. It raises financing costs. It discourages contractors. It erodes morale. Yet it persists because alternatives carry visible risk. This is the media trap. Action creates news. Inaction sustains noise. For heritage sites, time usually dampens controversy. Here, time sustains it. The property symbolizes unresolved status. Until status changes, stories recur. This loop taxes institutions quietly. Resources shift from preservation to messaging. The building remains unchanged. The narrative does not. Each cycle leaves residue. Public memory thickens. Legal mechanics constrain abrupt change. The lease embeds repair covenants and review clauses. Enforcement follows process. Notice periods apply. Cure windows extend. Arbitration precedes termination. Courts favor continuity for heritage assets. Remedies prioritize remediation over removal. This biases outcomes toward occupancy. Even strong political will encounters delay. Documentation requirements are extensive. Surveys must be commissioned. Findings must be shared. Responses must be logged. Timelines stretch. Meanwhile, obligations continue. Insurance policies require compliance. Lapses raise premiums. Lenders adjust terms when uncertainty rises. Credit tightens indirectly. None of this appears publicly. Yet it shapes feasibility. Lawyers advise caution. Missteps create precedent. Precedent travels. Administrators avoid being first. Thus, inertia persists. From outside, this looks like favoritism. Inside, it reads as risk management. Both can be true. The law mediates between them imperfectly. Over time, incremental compliance becomes the path. Small notices, minor works, renewed assessments. The property inches forward without decision. This satisfies legality, not clarity. Eventually, thresholds trigger action. Structural reports can compel works. Funding must follow. When funding fails, options narrow quickly. That moment defines outcomes more than rhetoric. Royal Lodge approaches that hinge gradually under mounting institutional constraint now. Royal Lodge continues operating under provisional assumptions. Budgets are approved annually, not strategically. This limits planning horizons. Managers focus on compliance, not vision. Short-term contracts replace long-term commitments. This reduces risk exposure, but increases cost volatility. Knowledge disperses as consultants rotate. Continuity suffers. The house becomes a project, not a home. This shift alters care quality. Preventive maintenance gives way to reactive response. Engineers warn against this approach. Deferred issues interact. Small leaks compromise electrical systems. Moisture undermines timber. Repairs overlap. Costs multiply. Despite this, occupancy remains constant. Presence prevents mothballing. Absence would require stabilization. Stabilization itself costs heavily. Thus, continued use appears cheaper, though it is not. This illusion persists because expenses are fragmented. No single invoice tells the full story. Accountability diffuses across departments. Each approves its share. The total remains abstract. Over years, abstraction becomes norm. When figures surface publicly, they shock. That shock resets debate briefly. Then routines resume. Royal Lodge advances through this cycle steadily. It neither collapses nor resolves. It endures as managed complexity. That endurance becomes policy by default. Without decisive intervention, time remains the only active decision-maker here still. From an architectural perspective, Royal Lodge reflects transitional design rather than singular vision. Its fabric layers centuries of adjustment. Additions respond to occupants, not doctrine. This complicates conservation philosophy. Purists seek restoration to imagined originals. Practitioners prioritize continued use. At Royal Lodge, use dominates. Walls bear scars of adaptation. Floor plans shifted repeatedly. Service routes snake unpredictably. These quirks increase maintenance burden. They also preserve authenticity. Authenticity here means survival through change. This principle guided earlier custodians. It now conflicts with regulatory frameworks. Modern standards demand efficiency, access, and sustainability. The house resists all three. Retrofitting risks erasing evidence of evolution. Leaving systems untouched risks failure. Architects describe this as a living dilemma. Every intervention solves one problem while creating another. Funding constraints narrow options further. The result is cautious minimalism. Small works, reversible choices, documentation, heavy processes. Progress slows. Meanwhile, deterioration continues incrementally. Time becomes adversary. Conservation accepts loss as inevitable. The question shifts from prevention to control. How much change is acceptable? How much loss tolerable? Royal Lodge forces these questions continuously. Answers vary by era. The current era prefers delay. Delay preserves appearance while deferring judgment indefinitely. Social meaning now outweighs physical form. Royal Lodge operates as narrative object. Different groups project values onto it. Supporters emphasize continuity and duty. Critics emphasize cost and inequality. Neither view is complete alone. The house mediates between them silently. Its gates separate space from society. That separation once felt protective. Now it feels provocative. Changing norms reshape interpretation. Privacy once justified privilege. Transparency now challenges it. Royal Lodge sits between eras. It embodies unresolved transition. Institutions hesitate to resolve it because resolution signals precedent. Precedent reshapes monarchy broadly. Thus, caution extends beyond this site. Decisions here echo elsewhere. This amplifies inertia. Yet unresolved symbols corrode legitimacy slowly. Studies of public trust show erosion occurs through accumulation, not event. Royal Lodge contributes incrementally. Each year, without clarity, adds friction. The effect is subtle. No single moment defines decline. Instead, narratives thicken. They become harder to counter. Eventually, symbolic weight exceeds architectural weight. At that point, structures lose protection. History shows this repeatedly. Palaces fall not from decay, but from meaninglessness. Royal Lodge has not reached that point, but indicators align. The future will hinge on narrative control as engineering alone. Royal Lodge endures as a case study in survival costs. Not financial alone. Emotional, institutional, and cultural costs accumulate. Preservation demands payment beyond budgets. Someone always absorbs it. Workers, administrators, reputations, time. The house does not choose. It consumes. Each repair extends life while narrowing freedom. Each delay preserves walls while eroding trust. This balance defines late-stage stewardship. When survival itself becomes purpose, purpose dissolves. Royal Lodge approaches that threshold. It is still beautiful, still functional, still defended. Yet defense is not direction. Direction requires decision. Decision requires sacrifice. History shows estates survive when sacrifice is acknowledged openly. Without that, they linger. Lingering drains quietly. The park remains serene. Visitors pass unaware of calculations underway. Inside, spreadsheets replace sentiment. Outside, narratives harden. Eventually, alignment must occur between meaning and maintenance. Until then, Royal Lodge remains suspended. Neither retreat nor monument. Neither home nor institution. Just a structure absorbing consequences deferred. The final judgment will not come from critics or courts. It will come from capacity. When capacity ends, change begins. That moment is approaching. The unanswered question persists. What will be surrendered to let this house survive long-term? As scrutiny continues, Royal Lodge increasingly reflects institutional exhaustion. Decision-makers cycle through roles faster than the problems they inherit. Briefings summarize history, but flatten nuance. Each new official confronts the same constraints: legal, financial, symbolic. Momentum stalls. The property becomes background noise within larger agendas. Yet background issues often erupt unexpectedly. Risk registers flag Royal Lodge consistently. Not as emergency, as persistent exposure. That category attracts less urgency. Over time, exposure normalizes. This normalization dulls response. Meanwhile, external benchmarks shift. Comparable heritage sites adopt adaptive models. Mixed use, public access, event hosting. Royal Lodge cannot follow easily. Its context forbids experimentation. Security requirements isolate it from innovation. This isolation increases cost per square foot annually. Economists describe this as negative scalability, larger footprint, fewer options. The estate absorbs this inefficiency quietly. But quiet does not mean harmless. Opportunity cost accumulates invisibly. Resources allocated here cannot support other assets. That trade becomes harder to justify internally. Reports increasingly frame the lodge as outlier. Outliers invite review. Review invites change. Yet timing remains uncertain. Institutions prefer gradual correction, but gradualism sometimes amplifies disruption later. Royal Lodge advances toward that inflection. Each year without resolution increases eventual impact. The house remains intact. The margin for easy solutions shrinks steadily. The surrounding parkland complicates any resolution. Windsor Great Park is not merely setting. It is regulated landscape with layered protections. Visual integrity matters. Traffic patterns are controlled. Infrastructure additions face resistance. Any redevelopment within the park triggers consultation. Public bodies, conservationists, heritage groups, and security services all engage. This multiplies timelines. Royal Lodge sits deep inside these intersecting authorities. Even minor changes require coordination. That friction discourages initiative. Maintenance becomes default activity. Transformation becomes hypothetical. Meanwhile, ecological priorities intensify. Biodiversity targets influence land use. Deer management affects vegetation near structures. Tree removal alters sightlines. Each decision invites scrutiny. The lodge becomes hostage to its context. Context, it once justified privacy. Now it restricts adaptability. This paradox limits future scenarios. Planners model outcomes conservatively. Worst-case assumptions dominate. These models favor inaction. Inaction preserves compliance, but sacrifices opportunity. Over time, opportunity loss becomes irreversible. Younger generations reinterpret heritage differently. Access matters. Engagement matters. Royal Lodge offers neither. Its relevance narrows. When relevance narrows, support erodes. Support underwrites preservation. Without it, estates struggle. Royal Lodge has not reached that stage, but indicators trend consistently. Context protects the house. Context also confines it. That duality defines the dilemma. Within royal history, withdrawal often precedes transition. Estates associated with retreat eventually change hands or purpose. The process is rarely abrupt. Years of quiet adjustment precede visible shift. Royal Lodge appears mid-cycle. Signals align with historical patterns. Reduced visitation, limited investment, increased review frequency, narrative distancing. These are preparatory indicators. They do not guarantee outcome. They suggest readiness. The estate positions itself for flexibility. Legal frameworks are examined. Contingency plans drafted. None announced. Public silence masks internal motion. This stage can last decades. It depends on catalyst. Catalysts vary. Financial shock, structural failure, political shift, cultural reevaluation. Any could apply. None are predictable. Thus, planning emphasizes resilience rather than prediction. Royal Lodge is stabilized, not renewed. That distinction matters. Stabilization preserves status quo. Renewal redefines it. The current approach favors the former. It avoids controversy. It also avoids clarity. Over time, avoidance shapes legacy. The house becomes known for unresolved questions rather than resolved purpose. That reputation sticks. Heritage thrives on story. Stagnant stories fade. When they fade, defense weakens. Royal Lodge still commands attention. But attention without affection is fragile. Sustaining it requires narrative renewal eventually. Otherwise, the structure endures without champion. That condition rarely lasts indefinitely. As the narrative closes, Royal Lodge stands unchanged physically, yet altered in meaning. It has moved from refuge to responsibility, from comfort to calculation. Each generation redefined its role. The present one hesitates. Hesitation carries cost. Not dramatic, incremental. The house absorbs resources, time, and attention steadily. Its survival depends on willingness to bear that cost. History suggests such willingness wanes when purpose blurs. Royal Lodge's purpose remains contested. Is it shelter, symbol, obligation, artifact? Each answer implies different future. The estate cannot embody all indefinitely. At some point, prioritization occurs. That moment often arrives quietly. A budget line reduced. A repair deferred. A review concluded. Then momentum shifts. Royal Lodge will adapt again, it always has. The question is not whether change comes. It is what form it takes. Preservation demands sacrifice. Release demands acceptance. Both carry consequences. Institutions delay to avoid choosing. Delay itself becomes choice. The house waits, maintained, guarded, expensive. Its lawns remain perfect. Its rooms remain heated. Its story remains open. In the end, legacy will not be defined by architecture alone. It will be defined by what was surrendered to sustain it, and whether that surrender was worth the cost. Behind institutional language, human timelines continue advancing. Age changes capacity. Health alters tolerance for uncertainty. Personal horizons shorten, while property horizons remain long. This mismatch shapes late-stage decisions. Royal Lodge demands foresight, measured in decades. Individuals operate in years. That gap creates friction. Advisors plan for asset longevity. Occupants plan for daily stability. These goals diverge subtly. Over time, divergence becomes impasse. Royal history records similar stalemates. Estates linger while lives move on. Eventually, succession forces clarity. That clarity is rarely elegant. It arrives through necessity. Royal Lodge approaches that territory. The question shifts from policy to practicality. Who can physically manage this place? Who can fund it? Who can justify it? These questions intensify quietly. They are not ideological. They are logistical. Logistics often decide fate more decisively than debate. When logistics fail, narratives follow. The house will not negotiate. Boilers break. Roofs leak. Trees fall. Tvio systems age. Each failure demands response. Responses require authority. Authority requires mandate. Mandates change with reigns and reputations. Royal Lodge has crossed multiple reigns already. It will cross more. Whether it does so, occupied remains uncertain. What is certain is movement toward resolution. Stasis is temporary. History tolerates it briefly. Then circumstances intervene. The Lodge waits for that intervention. Public memory compresses complex histories into symbols. Royal Lodge risks becoming shorthand rather than story. That transformation reduces empathy. Nuance fades. What remains is scale and cost. Scholars warn this is dangerous for heritage stewardship. When sites lose narrative depth, protection weakens. Royal Lodge's layered past offers depth. Retreat, recovery, family. But current discourse foregrounds expense. Restoring balance requires access to story. Access is limited by design. Security restricts interpretation. Without interpretation, meaning contracts. Institutions recognize this problem. Solutions are constrained. Private briefings substitute for public education. That strategy lacks reach. Over time, misunderstanding calcifies. The lodge becomes emblem rather than place. Emblems polarize. They invite resolution through simplification. Simplification rarely favors preservation. It favors closure or transfer. Royal Lodge stands at risk of symbolic exhaustion. Its physical endurance contrasts with narrative fatigue. To reverse this, decisive reframing would be required. Reframing requires leadership willing to expend capital. Capital is finite. Leaders ration it. They deploy it where returns are clearer. Royal Lodge offers one uncertain return. That uncertainty delays investment of attention. Delay deepens fatigue. This feedback loop tightens gradually. Eventually, fatigue dictates outcome. The house remains. The story thins. That imbalance cannot persist indefinitely. As heritage assets age, stewardship philosophies evolve. Earlier eras emphasized continuity at any cost. Contemporary frameworks stress proportionality. This shift alters evaluation. Royal Lodge once justified expense through private function. That justification weakens. Proportionality asks what benefit accrues relative to cost. Benefit must be articulated. Privacy alone no longer suffices. This rebalancing affects internal recommendations. Asset managers apply comparative analysis. Where else could resources deliver greater impact? Such questions surface quietly. They influence funding allocations subtly. Over time, priorities shift. Royal Lodge competes with sites offering public value. Competition disadvantages it structurally. Its isolation precludes outreach. Its scale inflates cost. Its controversy complicates messaging. These factors accumulate. None alone decide outcome. Together, they steer it. The house remains stable today. Stability masks trajectory. Trajectories emerge only in hindsight. By then, alternatives narrow. Royal Lodge has entered that phase. Options exist but shrink annually. Preservationists advocate patience. Economists advocate efficiency. Cultural critics advocate transparency. Institutions balance all three imperfectly. Eventually, one dominates. Which one prevails will define the lodge's next incarnation. The building will survive. Buildings often do. The question is, how much of its current form survives with it? In its current state, Royal Lodge embodies unresolved modern monarchy. It is private yet publicly funded, indirectly. Historic yet operational. Shielded yet scrutinized. These contradictions strain systems designed for clarity. Over time, contradictions force choice. The estate's future will be decided not by drama, but by alignment. Alignment between purpose, cost, and legitimacy. That alignment has not yet occurred. Until it does, the lodge persists as managed tension. Law maintains it. Labor sustains it. Money supports it. Narrative challenges it. Each force pulls differently. When one weakens, balance shifts. The timing remains unknown. What is known is the cumulative nature of cost. Preservation charges interest. Delay compounds it. Survival demands payment continually. Royal Lodge has always required payment. Comfort paid in discretion. Privacy paid in isolation. Stability paid in money. The ledger grows longer with time. Eventually, someone must decide what entry matters most. That decision will define legacy more than architecture. Long after rooms change hands, the question will remain attached to this place. Not who lived here, but what was willingly surrendered so it could continue standing.